Vic Isaacs had the honour of ringing the bell to mark the start of this winner-takes-all affair, the Army scorer stepping down after 57 summers covering military cricket. With the Ashes underway at Edgbaston, worth noting that the Army hosted the touring Australian side at Aldershot in 1934. Even Vic wasn't around then. One player who did feature was Don Bradman, often cited as the greatest batsman of all time. Despite a positive start to the Army innings, the Don may not have been a fan of what was to follow. A steady stream of wickets fell throughout the match, starting with Army opener Bali. He was caught behind by Adam Fisher from the bowling of RAF warhorse Jimmy Argo, and the Army were 11 for 1. Fellow Army opener Liam Fletcher followed soon after. This time Ross Diver bagged the catch from John Inniff's bowling, and the Army were now 12 for 2. The hard-hitting Graham Wiseman looked to rebuild the innings with several big blows to the boundary. And with Tade Carmichael contributing at the other end, the score began to look in better shape. But then Wiseman misjudged a shot, and after a brief juggle by McGeorge, he was gone for 39, and the score 89 for 3. With Carmichael at the crease, the Army still had hopes of posting a decent score. However, instead of putting pressure on the Air Force bowlers, the home side found themselves under the cosh, as first Carmichael fell for 40. Then, next ball, Tom Lester was gone. He was run out thanks to Fisher's fine glove work, and the Army were now 109 for 5. The collapse continued at an alarming rate. Army skipper Jonathan Boynton was undone by the bowling of Sam Blore. By the time Ash Watson had seen off Army tail-ender Marlon Simon, the Army were all out for just 135. So quite a collapse by the Army as 8 wickets fell for just 46 runs, putting the Air Force on top at the halfway stage. For the Army to have any chance of victory, they'd need an early breakthrough. Yuri Hill duly delivered by dismissing Ross Diver with just 4 runs on the board. Despite the setback, there were no signs of RAF panic until Boynton and wicketkeeper Lester combined to see off Tom Fairclough with the score 25 for 2. Aidan Cunningham was next man in, but lasted just 1 delivery as he headed straight back to the hutch thanks to Simon's smart catch. By now, Boynton was ripping through the Air Force batting lineup. Watson the next to go with a total 33 for 4. A tense period of play followed. Air Force skipper Fisher kept his team on top with some well-timed wallops to the rope. But with Boynton bowling brilliantly, the airmen's innings couldn't quite get going. Nevertheless, they were creeping their way towards the target and at this stage were still favourites to win. Then disaster for the Air Force. Having steered his side to within sight of victory, Fisher was gone, out for 44 from the bowling of Ross Dearden. Blore wasn't far behind, Dearden putting him in a spin with Boynton taking the catch, the score now 112 for 7. Emerson Wood marked his inter-services debut in style, sprinting in to trap McGeorge LBW as the Air Force tail faltered. The rookie rocked his opponents with his pace as the Army closed in on victory. Wood came up with the goods again in his second over as the ball slammed into Harrison's pads and he was out leg before. And it was left to the young Queen's Royal Hussars officer to charge in and finish the job as the Air Force slipped to 122 all out and the Army celebrated their narrow win. So 2 wins from 2 for the Army. Having beaten the Navy 24 hours earlier, they scraped home against the Air Force to claim an inter-services double, the T20 title secured earlier in the season. Julian Evans, Forces News, Aldershot.